Hey world builders, welcome back to Build Together. This is day 272. Today's prompt is, what is an example of a police force in your world? Does it have any professional forces, perhaps the classic hue and cry, or is there a paramilitary force? Why do they do it that way? And this comes from MapleMe in the Discord. As you might be able to tell, I have moved. I am in a new place. We have gotten away from some noise. It was really bothering us on the weekends. So I'm a little bit tired, a little bit out of it, but let's talk about Riik, the law enforcement system of the Jalar Confederation. So Riik is the general law enforcement system of the Jalar Confederation, and their hierarchy technically terminates at the Jalar Union itself, which is the governing body that is sort of made up of representatives from each of the four states, the founding four states of the Jalar Confederation. Generally, however, the Jalar Union doesn't have really any input. This happens extremely rarely, and only in the case that you get someone whose corruption is so deep and problematic that they have to kind of have a hearing at the Jalar Union itself to properly say, what do we do with this person? How do we make them an example? How do we clean this up? Now, the unfortunate way that Riik works is similar to how the representatives work, which is based off of the population percentage of a given area. Now, unfortunately, this percentage is not calculated super well, which means that the lower populous states like Southern Katki and Duzi end up getting less enforcement, while enforcement grows in Northern Katki and Alaptani, which then drives the population to be lower in the lower places and higher in the higher places, because if you're in a place where things are not enforced well and it's kind of dangerous, then you move to the place that's safer. And so this has been having a sort of compounding effect on these locations a little bit as they become harder and harder to enforce, and thus even less populated and thus even more dangerous. Now, the Riik system is relatively simple. In a single city, you have a number of rings that are each run by a patrol master and manned by said patrol. Now, a patrol master has close to plenary authority in their general vicinity, so long as that authority is within the bounds of the laws of the Union, which is relatively well-defined book of law that will go into what should be punished, how it should be punished, whether that be a fine, detainment, or worse. Until recently, these rings could get a little out of control, but there was put forward by the Duzi representatives a system of inspections of rings, which has greatly reduced a lot of the corruption. Of course, there's a lot of small-scale corruption that still happens all the time, like bribery and other things along this line. But otherwise, it is actually one of the more stable forces besides the Chainkeepers of the Zicluster Empire that you can see really anywhere on Atovia. What is an example of a police force in your world? Does it have any professional forces, perhaps the classic hue and cry, or is there a paramilitary force? Why do they do it that way? Thanks for building together.